Say hi. Put it more in front of me. Good morning, blondes, ladies and gentlemen. What is the biggest problem facing the world? Is it climate change? Is it overpopulation? The answer is no. The biggest problem facing the world is poor thinking. Poor thinking. Now, how did that come about? Well, it came about in the following way. That when Greek thinking from 2,400 years ago, when Greek thinking came into Europe, the time of the Renaissance, schools, universities, thinking were all in the hands of the church. The church did not need creative thinking, did not need design thinking, did not need perceptual thinking. What the church did need was truth, logic, and argument with which to prove heretics wrong. So we developed a culture of thinking based on truth, logic, and argument, a culture of thinking to find the truth. Now, that has been very useful to us in science, and we have made great progress, but we have never culturally developed thinking for creating value. To be sure, individuals, entrepreneurs, innovators, inventors have done it, but culturally it's never been there. And that is a huge deficiency, a huge deficiency. And so what happens on the political level is people are used to analysis and judgment. So most of our thinking is rather like these analogy of a doctor in a clinic, and a patient comes in, and the doctor examines the patient, takes the history, does some test. What is the doctor trying to do? The doctor is trying to identify a standard situation in order to provide a standard answer. And that is 95% of our thinking and 100% of our education. Standard situations, standard answers. And it's very good, but it's not good enough. So we need thinking to create value. Now, where is that going to come from? Well, on the creative level, once we understand the brain as a pattern system, pattern-making system, then there is a logic of patterning systems. And on that, we can build the tools of lateral thinking. They can be very powerful. One afternoon, a workshop working for a steel company, using just one of the tools of lateral thinking, developed 21,000 new ideas in one afternoon. in one afternoon. Creativity can be a very deliberate, very formal process. Then there are other processes, like the 6 hats. That is now beginning to be used in juries in court in the United States, the first change in the jury system for more than 1,000 years. So we're looking at changes in thinking. Now, many years ago, at the United Nations, I tried to set up a group to provide additional ideas beyond the usual ideas. And Kofi Annan, who was Secretary General, was at some of my meetings. The result was very disappointing because they said, we are not here to think, we're here to represent our countries, not to think. So they are not going to do it. So one of the big projects I have is somewhere in the world, and Holland may be a good country, I want to set up a palace of thinking. Now, the palace of thinking would have 2 functions. The first function is to receive ideas from everywhere and to publish and promote the best ones. And the second one is to organize specific creative meetings on world issues like drugs, immigration, and so on, and develop new ideas. So to be the one source in the world for new ideas, new possibilities. And what is needed for it is some iconic building, some really excellent building which looks good in photographs or television to give the sense of importance to thinking that thinking deserves. So thinking is an important human function. In addition to that, there are other things that can be done. For instance, I believe that every government should have a minister of thinking. Minister of thinking would look after thinking, help different departments, assess different thinking, provide new ideas. And then schools can teach thinking as a separate subject. Research in the United Kingdom shows that teaching by thinking as a separate subject in school improves performance in every subject by between 30 and 100%. Every subject, maths, science, geography, history. Teaching thinking as a separate subject improves performance. Teaching thinking to very violent youngsters who are too violent to go to ordinary schools, go to special schools, teaching thinking in a 20-year follow-up, they showed they reduced the rate of criminal conviction to 1/10 of what it had been. Teaching thinking to unemployed youngsters for just 5 hours increased the employment rate 500%. Just teaching thinking for 5 hours. So thinking is very powerful, very important. It's something that we have almost completely neglected for 2,400 years. And as I was saying, there's a lot that we can do about it. And it's not a mystery. In China, the big university in Beijing has been in research on my work in schools for 9 years. They like the results very much, and they're talking about introducing it into 680,000 schools in China. There's a big project in India as well. So if China and India start thinking, that's half the world population, so that's a big start. So thinking is important. Traditional philosophy, analysis, and so on is not enough. We need what I call operational thinking. Operational thinking is thinking to make things happen. And that, of course, includes design. Design is putting together what you have to deliver the values you want. It's a very broad term, not just restricted to aesthetic design and so on. So thinking is important. Poor thinking or limited thinking is the world's biggest problem, and if we improve that, that will help us deal with the other problems as well. So that's the message I want to make for Improvement Day. That Improvement Day, we can improve what we're doing about thinking. And if, for example, we set up the Palace of Thinking here in Holland, then Holland would have a unique role in the world, the place from which new ideas come to help other people solve their problems. For example, if we look at the Gaza and Israel problem, the response is they're firing rockets at us, we'll bomb them. Okay, that's a traditional response. A design response would be that all the countries which set up Israel should jointly give the Palestinians a grant of $3 billion a year, but every time they fired a rocket at Israel, they lose 50 million. Now, behavior changes very much. In other words, design is a key part of thinking. Analysis and judgment are not enough. Thank you very much.
Dr. Edward de Bono, Mr. de Bono, are there any places on Earth at the moment that you think look a bit like your initiative or that you think are promising, places or institutes that are promising?
Well, there's an example, interesting example. Many years ago, in Venezuela, there was a professor of philosophy who read one of my books, became very motivated. He then joined the ruling party, the COPEI party, and they said, and what ministry do you want? He said, I want a new ministry, Ministry for the Development of Intelligence, which he became.
Yeah.
He then flew to London to see me. He said, I've got this new ministry, but I don't know what to do. I said, I've got programs in school. He invited me to Venezuela. I trained 250 teachers. They picked up experience. Then they trained 107,000 teachers, and by law, it was in every school.
Okay.
So it usually happens through one man, senior enough to make things happen, and it happens.
Yeah. So you need a palace. Anyone offering a palace, maybe?
Yes.
Ik hoop dat er iemand uit Soesdijk is. Anyone that has a place. I would like to team up with Mr. Edward de Bono. Anyone that feels the urge to team up. Yes. Yeah, a weird idea. That's what Kees Dam says.
And World Foresight Forum.
The world, yeah.
World Foresight Forum om Den Haag tot tweede stad van de Verenigde Naties te maken.
To make it the second city
als stad van vrede en veiligheid.
Could you change it to English?
Yes, in April there is in The Hague the World Foresight Forum will be organized there to make The Hague the city in the world after New York, the first city of the United Nations, the first city for freedom, safety, protection, and perhaps thinking also.
Yes, absolutely.
And it will be organized around the Langevoorhout, including the old palace.
Absolutely.
Perhaps we can, perhaps it's lateral thinking.
Yes.
Perhaps there's something to be organized there.
Yes.
Yeah. And would you be kind enough to be the project manager of this?
Yes.
Of course.
Of course you will. Yeah. Kees Dam, thank you very much. By improvisation.
That sounds a good idea.
Yeah. May I help you to...
I like the idea.
Yeah,
yes.
get off the stage. And then there will be a changement.
Yes.
I'll help you. And again, thank you for being with us.